In New York City, early in the morning, a teenage Peter Parker is running after his school bus. At first, the driver doesn't want to stop, but Mary Jane asks him to wait. The driver agrees, and Peter gets on the bus. He looks for a seat, but no one wants to sit next to him. The students make fun of him and laugh. These students are on a field trip to the science department at Columbia University. A wealthy boy, Harry Osborn, also arrives, brought there by his father, Norman Osborn. Harry gets out and joins his friend Peter. Norman is impressed by Peter's intelligence in science. In the laboratory, they are introduced to various types of spiders. A spider that jumps and catches its prey, a spider that creates a very strong web similar to cables used on bridges, a highly sensitive spider with a sort of spider sense. Harry notices Mary Jane standing alone and tells Peter to talk to her. But Peter is too shy and asks Harry to approach her instead. While Harry is talking to Mary Jane, they see a new genetically modified spider. This spider was engineered by combining the DNA of 3 different spiders, essentially a super spider. Mary Jane notices that one of the spiders has gotten out of its container. That spider suddenly drops onto Peter and bites his hand. Peter flinches in pain, shaking his hand, and the spider falls to the floor. Meanwhile, at Oscorp, Norman Osborn is meeting with military contractors. They ask about the serum designed to enhance human abilities. The scientists say it isn't ready yet, but Norman promises to test it immediately. The military warns that if Oscorp isn't ready, the funding will go to another company. At Peter's home, his uncle Ben and Aunt May are there. Ben has just retired but struggles to find a job suitable for his age. May supports him and assures him that everything will be fine. At that moment, Peter arrives home exhausted and goes straight to his room. That night, Peter's body becomes feverish, and the spot where the spider bit him swells. He shivers and falls asleep. Late at night, in the Oscorp lab, Norman tests the serum on himself. He convulses in pain, then wakes up enraged and kills his assistant. The next morning, Peter wakes up and looks in the mirror. He can see clearly without his glasses, and his body has become muscular. On the way to school, he sees Mary Jane and notices her arguing with her father. At school, while Peter is running to catch the bus again, his hand suddenly becomes sticky, causing him to get stuck to a banner. In the school cafeteria, Peter sees Mary Jane. Reacting instantly, he catches Mary Jane and even saves her lunch without dropping anything. Mary Jane is amazed by Peter's quick and calm movements. Peter sits back down. At that moment, he notices a fork stuck to his hand. When he pulls it off, a web suddenly shoots from his wrist and lands on a plate full of food. When Peter pulls the plate toward himself, he accidentally flings it onto Flashback. Flash, Mary Jane's boyfriend, gets angry. Frightened, Peter quickly leaves the cafeteria. Outside, Flash confronts Peter and tries to punch him. Suddenly, Peter's senses sharpen, and he feels danger approaching before it happens. He dodges every punch with ease. Mary Jane tries to stop Flash, but he refuses to listen. Finally, Peter gets angry, hits Flash, and sends him flying with tremendous force. Peter runs away. Soon after, he begins noticing strange changes in his body. Sharp spikes have grown on his fingertips. He tests his abilities by climbing a wall. Surprisingly, he can stick to it and climb without any equipment. Peter continues to experiment with his new powers, jumping from building to building and trying to shoot webs. After several failed attempts, a web finally shoots out of his hand. He grabs it and swings through the air, but accidentally crashes into a billboard. Later that night, when he returns home, everyone is asleep. From a distance, he sees Mary Jane being yelled at by her father again. Taking out the trash, Peter runs into her. She looks upset, and he tries to comfort her. He apologizes for hitting Flash, but Mary Jane doesn't pay much attention. She asks Peter about his plans after graduation. Peter says he wants to work as a photographer and continue studying. Mary Jane dreams of becoming a theater actress. While they talk, Flash arrives in his new car and picks Mary Jane up. Peter is left alone. The next day, Peter is reading a newspaper and looking at car prices. His attention is caught by an advertisement for a wrestling competition offering a $3,000 prize. Wanting to buy a car, Peter becomes interested and begins designing his own costume. In the morning, Peter comes downstairs and asks Uncle Ben for permission to go to the library. Ben senses that Peter has been acting differently lately and worries about him. They drive together. On the way, Ben gives Peter advice. With great power comes great responsibility. But Peter gets irritated, saying he can take care of himself and isn't a kid anymore. After arriving at the library, Peter doesn't go inside. Instead, he heads straight to the wrestling arena. At the arena, he registers and waits his turn. In the ring, the champion, a wrestler named Bonesaw, is easily defeating his opponents. When Peter's turn comes, the announcer sees his costume and introduces him as Spider-Man. Suddenly, a metal cage drops over the ring, frightening Peter. The fight begins. Bonesaw hits Peter several times, knocking him down. But soon Peter uses his powers and defeats Bonesaw. After winning, Peter is supposed to receive the promised $3,000, but the promoter gives him only $100. Peter gets angry and storms off. At that moment, a thief robs the cashier and runs past Peter. Even though Peter could easily stop him, he does nothing out of frustration and lets the thief escape. Outside, Peter hears people shouting and walks toward the commotion. There, he finds his uncle Ben badly injured. A thief shot him and stole his car. Ben dies from his wound. Peter overhears the police conversation and learns where the criminal fled. He immediately chases after him. Jumping across the city, Peter stops the escaping car. When the thief runs into a building, Peter follows him inside, catches up to him, and beats him severely. As he gets a closer look, Peter realizes that this is the same thief who stole the money at the wrestling arena, the very criminal Peter could have stopped earlier, but chose not to. Terrified, the thief tries to escape, but he falls out of a window and dies. Peter returns home and hugs Aunt May, who is heartbroken after losing her husband. Elsewhere, a military general meets with scientists from Quest Aerospace, Oscorp's rival company. They are testing a new military device. The general considers moving funding from Oscorp to Quest Aerospace. Suddenly, a mysterious figure wearing a green mask, the Green Goblin, arrives, starts shooting, and destroys the entire testing site. A few days later, Peter and his friends graduate from high school. At the graduation ceremony, Harry notices that Mary Jane is no longer with her boyfriend. When Peter comes home, he goes to his room and breaks down in tears. He remembers Uncle Ben's final words. Aunt May comforts him. Peter opens his suitcase and sees the Spider-Man suit inside. He recalls his uncle's message. With great power comes great responsibility. This marks the true beginning of Spider-Man. He starts helping the people of New York, his heroic act spreading throughout the city and making him well known. Meanwhile, at the Daily Bugle, editor-in-chief Jonah Jameson discusses Spider-Man with his staff. The newspaper has no photographer who can capture close-up photos of Spider-Man, so they begin searching for one. Out on the street, Peter meets Mary Jane. She is embarrassed that she now works as a waitress in a restaurant. Peter encourages her not to give up on her dream. Mary Jane tells Peter she is currently dating Harry. She asks Peter not to mention it to him. Then she rushes off. She has to get to an audition. Peter returns to the apartment he shares with Harry. Norman Osborn is also there. Peter complains about losing his job. Harry asks his father to help Peter find work, but Peter refuses. During their conversation, he notices a headline saying that the Daily Bugle is looking for photographs of Spider-Man. That evening, Peter goes out as Spider-Man, bringing his camera along. The next day, he takes the photos he captured to the Daily Bugle. Jonah evaluates them and pays him only a small amount. Peter asks for a steady job, but Jonah agrees to hire him only as a freelancer. Meanwhile, at Oscorp, the board of directors meets and decides to sell the company to Quest Aerospace and to remove Norman from his position. Norman becomes furious, but the decision has already been made. The World Unity Festival takes place. Peter goes there to take photos. He sees Mary Jane and Harry together. At that moment, Peter senses danger approaching. His instinct is correct. The Green Goblin flies in and throws a bomb. It explodes, and the balcony where Mary Jane stands collapses. Peter immediately puts on his Spider-Man suit and rushes to help. Green Goblin kills the board members. Spider-Man swings in and fights him. As Mary Jane falls, Spider-Man catches her just in time. Later, Harry tells Peter about his relationship with Mary Jane. He knows Peter likes her, but also knows Peter never confessed his feelings. Peter doesn't get angry and supports their relationship. Meanwhile, Norman continues hearing dark voices inside his mind and decides to destroy everyone who stands in his way. The next day at the Daily Bugle, Peter hands in his photos. After he leaves, the Green Goblin suddenly bursts in and grabs Jonah by the throat, demanding to know who takes the pictures of Spider-Man. Jonah claims he doesn't know. At that moment, Spider-Man appears. The Green Goblin sprays him with knockout gas, rendering him unconscious, and abducts him. The Green Goblin offers Spider-Man a deal. They should join forces, turn against the city, and destroy its people. Otherwise, they will remain eternal enemies, and innocent people will pay the price. After delivering his message, He leaves. That evening, Peter sees Mary Jane walking down the street. He wants to ask her out for a burger, but she tells him she's on her way to meet Harry. Peter notices two suspicious men following her. Moments later, they try to drag her away by force, but Spider-Man arrives just in time and saves her. Mary Jane thanks Spider-Man and kisses him. The next day, a fire breaks out in the city. Spider-Man rushes to rescue the people. He saves a child, then hears someone yelling for help inside the building. When he goes back in, the Green Goblin ambushes him. They fight, and Spider-Man is injured. A sudden explosion forces him to escape. Later that day, Norman arrives at Harry's apartment, where Aunt May and Mary Jane are preparing a Thanksgiving dinner. It is Norman's first time seeing Mary Jane. Aunt May mentions that Peter is missing. Just then, Spider-Man sneaks in through a window, surprising everyone. They go searching for Peter in his room. Peter quickly climbs to the ceiling and hides. A drop of blood from his wounded arm falls to the floor. Norman becomes suspicious and scans the room carefully. A few minutes later, Peter walks in from the hallway, pretending he just arrived and apologizing for being late. They sit at the dinner table. Aunt May notices blood on Peter's arm and becomes worried. Norman also notices the wound and recalls his earlier fight with Spider-Man. He abruptly stands up and leaves. Harry tries to stop him because he wants to introduce Mary Jane to his father, but Norman says Mary Jane is not good enough for Harry and disapproves of their relationship. Hurt by his words, Mary Jane quietly leaves. Back at the Osborn mansion, Norman realizes Spider-Man's true identity and decides to target Peter's loved ones. That night, the Green Goblin attacks Aunt May, leaving her hospitalized. Peter now understands that the Goblin knows who he is. The next day, Mary Jane visits Aunt May in the hospital. She confides in Peter, admitting she is in love with Spider-Man. Peter smiles and introduces himself as Spider-Man's personal photographer. He tells her that Spider-Man always asks about her and thinks she's a very special person. Mary Jane blushes, touched by his words. At that moment, Harry walks in and sees them together. Later, he sadly tells his father that Peter and Mary Jane are becoming close. Norman chooses Mary Jane as his next target. In the hospital, Aunt May notices how exhausted Peter is and urges him to go home. She knows Peter has loved Mary Jane since childhood. Realizing Mary Jane is in danger, Peter immediately goes to find her. Indeed, the Green Goblin captures Mary Jane and brings her to a bridge. He gives Spider-Man a cruel choice: save Mary Jane or save a cable car full of children. Then he drops both at the same time. Spider-Man catches Mary Jane first, then manages to grab the cable car, but his web strains under the heavy weight. The Green Goblin attacks, but people on the bridge defend Spider-Man by throwing objects at the Goblin. Eventually, Spider-Man safely brings Mary Jane and the children to safety. The Green Goblin attacks again and drags Spider-Man to an abandoned building. He throws bombs at him and beats him brutally. Enraged, Spider-Man gathers his strength and defeats the Goblin. The Goblin removes his mask, revealing that he is Norman Osborn. He tries to trick Spider-Man and stab him, but the attack backfires, and Norman is impaled by his own glider. Spider-Man carries Norman's body home. Harry arrives just in time to see Spider-Man standing over his father's body and attempts to shoot him, but Spider-Man escapes. The following day, Norman's funeral is held. Peter comforts Harry. Devastated by his father's death, Harry vows to take revenge on Spider-Man someday. He tells Peter he is the only family he has left. After the funeral, Peter visits Uncle Ben's grave. Mary Jane appears and confesses her true feelings. She loves Peter. They share a kiss, but Peter cannot return her feelings. He rejects her gently, choosing to protect her by staying away. Thus, the love story between Peter and Mary Jane comes to an end. And that is how the movie Spider-Man concludes. Thank you for watching. If you want the continuation, leave a comment. Don't forget to follow us on social media. See you in the next video.